Hello and welcome back. Here we are with an update on quite a lot of knitting that I've done in the last couple of weeks in February. February is a good knitting time for me. It's really too cold to be going out and spending my time in the garden, and we still have many quite dark nights here and quite dark mornings. And so it's rather nice just to stay cozy and keep knitting. Well, my West Yorkshire Spinners Piglet colour 4-ply bow Peep, and combining with the Rowan kidsilk in Grace has come up trumps for me. It was an experiment. I love a challenge. And I love starting new things that are my own idea, though potentially other people have combined these two yarns. But I really love the result. This is a Mount Everest of a cardigan, and I finally reached the peak, and I'm really thrilled with it. Whoops. It is just so cuddly. So it's like having a big cuddle, and wraps around me beautifully. As you can see, I've made it absolutely expansive in size so that it's really almost like a blanket for me in these, and it's going to be worn in the chilly winter months. I used a leaf lace pattern, and this is why it took perhaps rather longer than if it had just been a straight stocking stitch. And I chose pink mother of pearl buttons. There are 8 buttons down the front, and a 9th button is stitched into the hem on the side, because there's nothing worse than losing a button and not being able to replace it. And really, I've known some garments that have had 2 buttons stitched into them just in case. And it's basically my own design, my own idea. But as you know, I do use the wonderful Sweaters book by Anne Budd, B-U-D-D, which gives the templates for garments, and also helps with the number of stitches to cast on and to begin. And because I'm still learning the engineering and structuring of a pattern, I'm still a beginner at this. I'm finding that it is just so good to have a reference, and it's certainly working for me. So thank you very much, Anne Budd. So there we are with a very cozy knit. I started it before Christmas. In fact, I started it at the beginning of December, but as you will know, I do knit other things. I also had Christmas, and so there's no reason to be ashamed of the fact that it took me weeks and weeks to do. It's not a competition, and I really don't work well under pressure. So it got finished when it got finished, and I love it. So I highly recommend that combination of yarn to knit up a really lovely texture. So what else have I been doing? Well, my big challenge is my Jamieson Smith 2-ply jumper yarn. Again, taking Anne Budd as a sweater template, I somehow or other did my own idea, though, which is usually the way with me. And I wanted to think about a pretty little neckline and that's the name of the jumper that I'm giving it. A pretty neckline, yoke. I had knit the two sleeves first, and then I started on this pretty yoke, which is lace, and started to experiment and come up with my own design of lace as I was working down. And then I worked up from the hem, the front and the back. I think really because I wanted to see a finish, and it was taking me quite a long time to think out what sort of lace on the yoke I would have. So, Jamieson Smith 2-ply jumper weight, 1A, which is off-white, and I just love working with this wool. It is soft to the fingers when you're actually knitting it, and it's cozy to knit, so, and of course the results are wonderful. So 2 sleeves, knit up and put onto holders, and of course they knit up very quickly, and then the front and the back were knit. And as I say, I had been working on the yoke, and I'm very pleased with the yoke actually. I started with a little, it's not easy to see because it's still on the circular needle, but it's got a very pretty little neck, and then it opens out, and when it's finished I'm sure you'll get a better idea of the actual pattern that I devised on the yoke. But the challenge at this point was to join the front and the back to the yoke, get them together. And this is the front, and what I decided to do was a picot cast off, a picot edge on it, so that the whole garment would look almost like an Edwardian blouse, the old-fashioned Edwardian blouse, even though the sleeves aren't as full as an Edwardian blouse would be. So I'm working steadily on this, and the picot edging is done, it's joined to the front. So I now have to join the sleeves to the yoke and the back to the yoke, and then do the side seams, and voila, we will hopefully be finished. I'm just experimenting. If the picot edge is not going to play ball with me and actually lie flat enough, then I'm going to have to just cheat a little and stitch them, the picots, down at odd intervals to try and keep the seam flat. But we'll wait and see how that works out. So that's another cozy jumper, not quite perhaps as cozy, but certainly good for wearing as we approach Easter. Right, so my Daffodil cardigan, I'm very pleased with this, and it is being knit with Lopi Icelandic yarn. This is the first time I've used an Icelandic yarn, and I was looking for the colour bright green because the person who's getting this as a present were wanting to replace a lovely green cardigan that she's worn and worn and worn and has now worn out. Or it's not completely worn out, but yes, it's worn out. So looking for a bright green, I came across Lopi Einband, and the colour is 1764, so a really bright green. It's a daffodil green, and that's lovely for the time of year. And this is a fine yarn ideal for lace knits, and when you're knitting it, it does feel a bit rough to the fingers, but then it becomes very much softer when you are when you've washed it. So I was really rather surprised about knitting with green. Green, I think I've only ever had, or I've had 2 green items of clothing in my life. One was when I was a teenager, and it was about this colour of green. It was a quilted skirt. And the other was, again, this colour of green on a white woolen coat. And I think the lining was this colour of green. And neither of these garments I particularly liked. Green would not particularly be my colour, though it is for the person that I'm knitting it for. But I was unexpectedly surprised. I love knitting green. It's very restful in the eyes. And it reminded me of when you go to an air show and you're looking at the sky and watching all these airplanes and helicopters and all the rest of it, jets, etc., flying past, doing their aerobatics. And they advised you, look at the grass to rest your hands. Don't keep looking too long at the sky. Look at the grass. And of course, this is what's happening here. I'm looking at the grass and I'm finding it really restful on the eyes. So an unexpected bonus to knitting bright green. And as you know, I started with a rather pretty edging for the neck, and then I went into panels of lace. And as this gets finished, you can come back and see the lace more clearly. But there are 4 panels. This is a cardigan, so there's 2 on the side before the button band, and then 2 at the back. And this is going to be increased and knitted absolutely top down. I'm not going to have a seam in the middle. And I'm using my tortoiseshell knitting needles from Australia and thoroughly enjoying the green. Now, the other garment that I'm knitting is another Rowan yarn. In England, they call it Rowan, and in Scotland we call it Rowan. We have Rowan trees here, they're fairy trees. I have a Rowan tree in my garden. But Rowan is the English company, so there's a slight conflict there between Rowan and Rowan. This is Baby Soft Merino, and it's in a slight putty colour. I don't know if I actually do. I don't have a ball here to tell you what the actual colour is, but it's a sort of putty colour. And it's baby merino silk, and it's knitting up beautifully in a lace pattern. This is the sleeve. I've already completed a front. Again, this will be a cardigan, so one of the side fronts. And I'm calling it Angel Wings because that is the name of the lace pattern. And as you can see with lace, you can actually meet problems with lace when you come to the seam as you're increasing. That can be a bit of a tricky moment. And so one of the answers, which I like to follow, is simply to do stocking stitch to enable the increases at the side. And because this is the stitch seam under the arm, I'm not really going to lose anything. So that is a very, very pretty lace pattern that is working very, very well with this baby silk merino. And that will be less worn, of course, and will be worn hopefully in the late spring and into the summer here. I think there were two days last year where I actually didn't wear some sort of woolen garment, or actually got into a t-shirt. Well, there we are. Now, I have been also thinking about the vast choice of yarn that is available to me, and I am experimenting by now and again, not too often, but now and again, buying a ball and having a go. And this was the choice. It is by let's see, I think it's Robinson, and it's by Rerum Natura, Rerum Natura, which is French, and it's a really beautiful yarn, and it's made by sheep, Merino sheep at Arles in Provence, and they have recycled cotton in here as well. So it's an interesting mix. It's 70% wool, 28% recycled cotton, and 2% of other recycled fibres, which, well, the sky's the limit. I wonder what that is. The colour is Eau de Rose, and it is 30401. And you're talking about, they say a 4 to 4.5 millimetre needle would be about 5 stitches per inch. And this is a really lovely, lovely, soft pink. I love, love, love this colour. Again, I am not, because I'm so sold on the Jamieson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight, which is 100% wool. I've always got to think about the fact that a wool and mix will not be quite so fluffy. But this is soft, and when it knits up and gets washed, here's my sample, it does definitely become softer. I feel, in fact, I have a different gauge, so I did use the recommended 4.5 millimetre needles, but because I'm a loose knitter, it came out at 3.5 stitches in the sample per inch. But I quite like that. I like a rather more open one, and I feel that this would, if I go for it and actually make something, I think I would make more of a t-shirt top for the summer for this one. And just a little item that has nothing to do with knitting, except that I can link the name across. Why did I choose Robinson? Well, there are some absolutely lovely wools that are produced by Rerum Natura. There is Ulysse, which is gorgeous, and Gilead, I absolutely love. So I do recommend that you try that French wool. But I went for Robinson because, for a couple of reasons. I was fortunate to attend, I think, 5 different schools by the time I'd reached the age of 12, 13, which was an education in itself. Now, I would say it didn't help my actual education particularly arithmetic and mathematics, because there wasn't continuity between the schools being in Scotland and then down in England and then back in Scotland again. But when I was in England, I lived in North London, and I went to 3 different schools in quite a short space of time, but for a variety of reasons. I was not expelled, I have to say that, but I was moved around, and the second school that I went to was a lovely little, what we would call dame school, in Crouch End, and it was run in a Victorian house, old Victorian house with a garden, and it was a delightful year or so that I was there. I think I was there for 2 years, and I had the pleasure of knowing about that area of London, which has a tremendously interesting history. And my headmistress at this school was called Miss Robinson, and she was the niece of Heath Robinson, the artist. Now, I remember her as an old Victorian lady, and she wore a hairnet and a navy dress, and she was quite formidable. But the ladies who taught me there were lovely, and I did actually do well there. It was full of love, that school, and I never thought, of course, at the time, Heath Robinson. Well, we all know Heath Robinson from his amazing little cartoons of contraptions, and I hadn't realised till relatively later that in fact there were three artists. William, who is probably the most famous, and his brother Charles, and his brother Thomas, all of whom were artists and produced wonderful illustrations for children's books, which were absolutely beautiful. This was in the early 1900s. And William was the youngest of three, Thomas, then Charles, then William. And I would love to know who was Miss Robinson's uncle, and who was her father. Was her father in fact Thomas or Charles? Be very interesting. If anyone is watching and knows the answer to that, I'd love to know. Absolutely love to know. So I have a book here just to show you some of the art, because Charles and William were the better known, and this book is with their art reproductions included, just to give you an idea. And at the turn of the century, there was a great interest in fairy tales, and as you know, my title is Fireside and Fairytale. Well, the fireside is the knitting, but there will also be increased elements of fairy tale as we go along. So lovely, 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 very, very able, very talented gentlemen, and there's another one there, produced idyllic children's illustrations for the books, among other things. And I highly recommend that you go and look them up, see what you can find. I think this is Charles Robinson. Yes, this is called Summer by Charles Robinson. Yes, I did actually do art at the Crouch End School. I did. I had an education. Every school I went to seriously encouraged art. We had very good art. So that's Charles. And where is William? There's a very striking one of a shipwreck, or I don't know if it's a shipwreck, but it's a pirate ship for William. They're very similar. And let's see if I can find another one. Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely lovely. See, this is a William. No, that's a Charles. This is from A Midsummer Night's Dream. That's by William. By Charles. Not so well, seem to have lots and lots of Charles here. Not so well represented. Charles. Oh dear. Oh, by Charles. Well, we're getting a great many Charles, I think. Ah, here we are. Here's William, and it is the most beautiful sight he had ever seen from old time stories. And there we are, there's presumably the Sleeping Beauty. So, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you're inspired, and keep knitting. See you again. If you like it, let me know, thumbs up, and please subscribe if you feel like it. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.